I'm not the person you expected to see this morning, I'm sure. If you've been to any of the Friday night singings, you know I love to sing. And that is kind of my area of expertise. I know more about that than I know about preaching. So if we get started through this sermon and I get lost, we'll just start singing and we'll go with it. How about that? About 3.5 years ago, William Tankersley turned the Friday night singings over to me. He said, we've been talking, me and my wife, and we're not getting any younger, and we think it's time to get some help. And he called me and he says, how about helping me with this? Sure, fine, great. Been looking forward to being able to do something like that for a long time. What I didn't know he meant was that about 2 weeks later, he was just going to lay it in my lap and it was going to be mine from then on. And he sits right on the front pew most everywhere we go and watches me and makes me nervous. He put a burden on me to live up to his years of expertise and experience working those singings. But he's always right there to help me if I get in trouble. He's bailed me out of a couple of situations, and I get to songs that I don't know. I go, hey, William, what about this song? And he'll look at it, talk to it. He, at 98 years old, can look at a song for 5 minutes and sing it. I got to look at it for 5 weeks before I'll even try it. But he helps with all of that stuff, and to find out that he was in the hospital a couple of weeks ago and that he had fallen and all of those things really upset me, because William is like another grandfather to me, really. He reminds me a lot of my granddad. He took me in, and when we started going to these singings, and he says, I'm going to be your buddy, and you're going to learn how to do things. And I grew up in a house with a song leader. I knew about music. I just didn't care about music so much until I started going to the singings. But talking about burdens, and that's where what we're going to be looking at this morning, is bearing one another's burdens. Now, like I said, William is always there to help get me through a Friday night if I have a problem. We do the same thing for each other. Galatians chapter 6, starting in verse 1, that's going to be the main point of our sermon this morning. It says, Brethren, if a man be overtaken in a fault, you which are spiritual, restore such one in the spirit of meekness, considering thyself, lest thou also be tempted. Bear you one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. For if a man think himself to be something when he is nothing, he deceiveth himself. But let every man prove his own work, and then he shall have rejoicing in himself alone, and not in another. We'll come back and hit that very hard in just a little bit. For every man shall bear his own burden. That's another point we'll look at. Let him that is taught in the word communicate unto him that teacheth in all good things. Be not deceived, God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. For he that soweth to his flesh, boy, I can't read this morning, shall of the flesh reap corruption. But he that soweth to the Spirit shall of the Spirit reap life everlasting. And let us not be weary in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not. As we therefore have opportunity, let us do good unto all men, especially unto those that are of the household of faith. And that'll be something else that we will touch into a little bit later on in the morning. But what does it mean to bear somebody's burden? Have you ever really thought about it? In the Greek, it translates quite literally to the English to take up or to carry away whatever is bothering someone or whatever they are carrying. Sometimes the things that weigh on our minds become our burdens, but who knows those things besides us? If we don't talk to people about them, they can't help us bear our burdens. Going back to verse 5 there, where it says, For every man shall bear his own burden. You're the only one that knows what's going on inside your mind right now. And we can't help bear each other's burdens of the mind unless we take that burden ourselves and talk to somebody about it, right? I have spent a lot of time thinking about different things and different ways to present lessons, because it's been up until this past December 20 years since I even thought about putting together a sermon. It's not my forte, not my area of expertise. Didn't really think a whole lot about it, and I got the wild idea because people started pushing me. And I'm the kind of person, if you push me, I tend to push back. But they put a bit of a burden on me that you really need to try this. But those same folks that pushed me to do this are the same ones that support me everywhere I go. They're with me almost every Friday night. They've been to almost every opportunity I've had to speak. And my mom is my biggest supporter over here. She's been to every single opportunity I've had and covers a lot of miles to do it. Florence is nowhere near here. Yeah. But we love this area. We love the folks up in this area. And if it wasn't for the Friday night singings, I wouldn't know Beech Grove existed. But the things in your mind, and these are all things that have been on my mind, is wondering about the people that support me. You know, are they really here to support me, or are they here just because, or are they here because they've got to be at church somewhere? Those are things that I got to talk to them about so that they can help me understand, so I don't worry so much. Sometimes our grief, our guilt, and our uncertainty, or our health issues become a burden to us. Oh. It's hard to lose people. It's hard for the church to lose people. It's hard individually to lose people. But it can get to the point that it becomes a burden that we can't handle by ourselves. And thank goodness now there are people like Brother Don Williams and other folks around that do these grief seminars to help us with those things, to help get through that burden. The burden of guilt is something that is kind of, goes back to what's weighing on your mind. The only way you're going to get over that is to get it out in the open. Go talk to whoever else it concerns. Get that guilt off of you. The uncertainty of not knowing things becomes a burden. You know, I get up every morning and I don't know what I'm doing from day to day. I love that about my job. But there are some people that get up every morning and they're not even sure where their next meal is coming from. And those kind of things pose a burden to people that we just don't understand, because most of the time we are way overblessed in that area. We don't really understand what it's like to have to wonder, can I eat today? Am I going to have a car that gets me to work today? We don't understand all those things. Those people have a burden that we have to help them with if they let us know about it, and a lot of times they'll hide it from you. They won't tell you that I'm worried about this or that I'm struggling financially. They won't tell you that I need help. But every now and then somebody will walk in the church doors and they'll say, I need just a little bit. Don't give them just a little bit. Give them so much more. Incident happened a couple of weeks ago where Mom goes to church. Folks come in, ask one of the elders if they could get a little gas money from the church, trying to get to wherever they were going. You know, that's great, that's fine, and they would have gotten so much more. The problem became they got greedy and they grabbed the collection box and took off out the door. In that box was also money set aside for cancer donations, and every bit of that was gone. Now, that's a burden on the people, because now they're all wondering, is this going to happen again? And it's unfair that they should have to deal with that. But we have to deal with that in this world we're in. It's not right, it's not fair, all those things go with that. But what those people would have gotten if they had waited just a little bit longer would have been gas money, food money, the prayers and the love of that church sitting there. Now all they've got is everybody mad at them. And it's a typical human reaction to be mad about. I'm mad about that, and it's probably a good thing that I was not there that Sunday, because I'm just a little bit high-strung when it comes to that kind of stuff. And when you go to messing with my mama, I'm going to have a problem. And that's going to be a burden on you, because you're fixing to have a problem, and that problem is about 190 pounds of meat. You don't mess with people like that. You don't mess with my home church like that. I grew up in that little church, and it infuriated me. But the more I've thought about it, I don't have to worry about paying them back for that. I don't need to let that burden me down. That's all in God's hands. They've got to answer for their actions just like I got to answer for mine. So I had to calm myself down and think about those things. We get so tied up in stuff like that every single day. Things make us mad. But then we have things that make us sad. We have things that make us happy. We have things that we are just indifferent to. But when the folks are around you are happy, when things are going good, Romans 12:15 says we should rejoice with them that do rejoice, and we should weep with them that do weep. They may have a happy burden. You ever know anybody have a happy burden? They just everywhere they go, they make you feel uncomfortable because they're just happy all the time and smiling. I got a couple of guys at work. One of them's nearly 60 years old. He smiles from the time he gets out of his truck at work till the time he goes home. And we got a boy at work that just hired in. He's 19 years old and he is the exact same way. I don't think you can make him mad. And that puts a burden on all of us because we all want to be that happy. But we rejoice with them because they're always happy. We have better days being around them. And that's the way it ought to be. If you're a happy person, spread it around. Don't keep it to yourself. Walk around with that smile. The best thing you can share with somebody is a smile. Did you know that? If you walk into a room, and I'm going to pick on Mark and Bubba for a little bit, because I put a burden on Mark about a week and a half ago, and I like to pick on people anyway. But if Caleb walks in this morning and he is just bubbling over and bouncing off the walls and happy when he comes up here to lead singing, don't that make you want to sing a little bit better? Make you want to sing a little bit louder? But if he comes in here all ho hum, we're going to sing this song. How many of you going to want to sing with that? He can control the burden of this room simply by his body language. And he done a great job this morning. When he got out of the car this morning, he had a big smile on his face, and I was just like, this is going to be a good Sunday. He put a happy burden on me because he made me feel good to be here. I put a not so happy burden on Mark about a week and a half ago because coming back from Nashville, my truck just decided it didn't want to run right no more. And Mark, I even got in trouble for not calling somebody else first. So, sorry, you're going to catch that one too, most likely. But I called Mark because me and the wife were stuck on the side of the road in a truck that will not climb a hill. Anybody in here have any familiarity with diesels at all? You understand what happens when the turbocharger don't work. And a $4 clamp put me on the side of the road because my truck would not pull a hill. Those $4 parts are aggravating. So I called Mark. I said, where are you at, man? He said, I'm in Columbia just finishing up for the day. I said, well, I'm on the side of the road and I need help. He says, where are you at? It wasn't none of this, well, I got to do this, I got to do that. He says, where are you at? And here comes Mark barreling down the road about 30 minutes later with what I need to fix my truck and get home. Mark helped bear my burden that day. And that was a burden I was not anticipating and not expecting, and that happens to us every day. We get caught by things we're not anticipating and not expecting. Sometimes the burden we have is of our own making. You ever held a grudge against somebody that did you wrong? You just couldn't let it go. I just don't like him. I don't want you to have nothing to do with him. I don't want you to go. I'm not having nothing to do with that, and I don't want you to either. Why do you want to put that kind of burden on somebody? At that point, you're not a burden bearer. You're a burden maker. And that's not what we're supposed to be doing as Christians. Sometimes you're putting a burden on somebody and they don't even know what they've done to you. They just know you don't like them. They ain't figured out yet why. They don't realize they did anything wrong. And if you don't go talk to them, how are they going to know? Well, that burden goes both ways because you're hanging on to this over here and they're over here going, man, what happened here? If I walk into a store somewhere, Jennifer comes walking through and she says, hey, how are you? And I just turn around and walk away from her. Now, for the next 2 weeks, she's going to be wondering, what in the world is wrong with him? What did I do to deserve that? She ain't got a clue. But the burden on me is, I don't like Jennifer for whatever she said or did. She wouldn't let Mark go with me to look at a truck or to buy a truck or something. I don't know. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. She don't have a clue. All she knows is that she saw me and I didn't answer her, I didn't speak to her, I treated her like she was foreign. That's not fair. That puts a burden on her. But the burden on me is, I don't want to talk to Jennifer, so I go out of my way to stay away from her. And then finally I just decided, you know what, Jennifer don't know she did that. I just need to forgive that and go on. I need to quit letting that bother me. And the world gets a whole lot better And the load's a whole lot lighter when you just let those grudges go. And the next time I see Jennifer 2 weeks later, and she sees me, and I run up, hey, how are you? Where's Piggy at? Are y'all having a good day? Jennifer's now, she's wondering, she's got a different burden on her. She's like, what in the world has really gotten into this girl? Well, it's time for me to explain what she did and ask her to forgive me for what I've done or for holding that grudge. And I need to tell her, well, you did this and I didn't like it. And I'm sorry I took it this far. And then most likely, if Jennifer is the kind of person I think she is, she's going to look at me and go, well, you're stupid anyway. But if she's got the right heart, she's going to say, well, I'm sorry I did that and I didn't mean that. And then everybody's load just got a whole lot lighter. Sometimes just going and visiting somebody that's in the hospital or just confined at home can be the biggest burden lightening thing you can do. They don't necessarily need you to do anything or want you to do anything. But a little bit of your time, boy, that's valuable. Once you give your time, you don't ever get it back. And that's why jobs pay you for your time. They're buying that from you. But when you willingly give it to somebody, that takes a load off of them because they know they've got friends. And sometimes just talking to them on the phone when they've got things going on can lighten their load. You know, I have shied away from using certain examples because they hit really close to home, as in right there in the room with us. But I think this morning it'll be a good time to use it. We lost my dad in July. And one of my best friends grew up in the church. Had just recently lost his mom prior to that. But he, in the last few years, has been going to one of these big mega churches with all kind of stuff that we just don't agree with. We don't talk religion much anymore because he knows I don't agree with it, and he gets bent out of shape when I don't see his way, and I tend to get bent out of shape because I know he knows better. So when we start talking about church stuff, we're real careful about what we talk about. But he came to sit down and talk to Mom about what all was going on with Dad being there in the hospital, trying to help us feel better. And in that process, he got to talking about his mom and the things that he dealt with losing her like he did. And when he left, he felt just as good or better than we did with him being there. Sometimes, the little things you do to make other people feel better, to lighten their load, lightens your own load too. Because if we're all working together, there's no reason we can't get through anything that comes along. Jesus said, come and I will give you rest. He says, my yoke is easy, my burden is light. Well, if we can take this lesson in a little bit different direction now. We've talked about how we help each other through life and with things going on. But what is the burden of Christ? Have you ever thought about it? How can the burden of Christ be something so light and so easy, but yet so difficult? The burden of Christ is simply to do His will, keep His commandments. And part of that is being a Christian. And you can't be a Christian if you don't follow the steps to take on that burden. You can't be yoked to Christ if you don't follow the steps to salvation. When we are, as we love to say, a member of the church, meaning that we have been baptized, we have become Christians, we've got somebody in our corner that can bear everything that comes our way. We don't have to face anything alone. But so many times, we get hung up on thinking, I can do this myself. I don't need anything. I don't need any help with this. I got this, God. You just take a back seat. Folks, that's a burden we don't need to put on ourselves. And too many times we do it. Whatever your care may be, big, small, or even in the middle, you can put it on God. You can pray, ask Him to help with it. And I dare say that if you're sincere, you're going to get your help with it. Now, it may not look like God helping with it, Because He's going to send somebody along to help you just when you need it, if you're sincere when you pray. I've had that happen so many times. I get tied up with something that's bothering me, and I finally say, God, I got to let you handle this because I can't do it. And just a day or two later, somebody is dealing with the same kind of thing or has dealt with the same kind of thing, crosses my path, and it makes life a whole lot easier because now there's somebody I can talk to. You look around this room right now. There are people sitting in this room, I dare say, that have probably dealt with some of the same things that you may be dealing with right now. And if you'll lean on them, they'll help you. And they may lean back on you when you've gone through something prior to them going through it. And we have to work together for that. That is part of the burden of Christ. Technology is not my favorite thing, so I'm trying to get used to doing this so I have less to carry. 1 Peter chapter 5, verses 6 and 7. It says, humble yourselves therefore, under the mighty hand of God, that He may exalt you in due time, casting all your care on Him, for He careth for you. Casting all our cares? Yeah, every bit of it. Whether you're worried about supper tomorrow night, or whether you're worried about going to work tomorrow, or whether you're worried about what somebody said or did to you, talk to God about it. There's a reason that we see so many examples in the Bible of people praying and asking for answers. And if it wasn't in the Bible, then it wasn't important, but it is in the Bible, so it's important. Prayer can be the biggest burden relief you'll ever find, because sometimes just talking to God about it makes it easier to handle anyway. I've had to do my fair share of it through the years, and sometimes it's easier than it is at other times. And many times, like I say, when we help each other, we help ourselves just as much. But have you put on the burden of Christ this morning? And if you have, are you carrying your share of it? I got no problem telling you there have been times in my life when I didn't carry my share of it. But you know what the great thing about it is? You can always come back and pick it back up and start again. We serve a loving, caring God. And if we come to Him in the spirit of meekness and with a truly sensitive heart, ready to repent of what we're doing, ready to turn loose of those things, He'll forgive us. We can pick right back up and we can take off again like nothing ever happened. He forgives, He forgets, and folks, we got to learn to do the same thing. Quit putting that burden on yourself and on each other to remember what somebody did 20 years ago. It probably doesn't matter at this point anyway. It's time to let go and let God. It's time to let Him have our burdens, but it's time to pick up that burden of Christ if you haven't already. You know, it would tickle us to no end to help you take on that burden this morning if you need to. But it would also tickle us to no end to help you pick that burden back up if you need to. If we're not promised tomorrow, we're not promised leaving this building. We can pull out here on this highway and be like my grandmother and get hit in the driver's door and be gone. We don't know what the future holds. The great thing about that, I don't have to worry about what the future holds. That's not my burden to bear. All I got to worry about is make sure I'm ready for what happens in the future. And that's all any of us can do. But if you have a need, if you're subject to the Lord's invitation, you come as we stand and as we sing.